And we are live. This is Fred Gouveia with New York Casas reporting from Midtown Manhattan. And today we have an amazing lineup of guests straight from South America, São Paulo, Brazil, which happens to also be my hometown. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes for you guys to be joining us. And I would like to give a very warm welcome to our guests. First, Thiago Granato, Fernando Bergalo, and Paulo Spencieri. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Fred.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone.
Beautiful.
Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Let's start down beneath me here. Paulo Spencieri. He's the director of private equity for Vitacon. If you guys have never heard of the name Vitacon, make sure you write this one down because you will hear about Vitacon in the future. There are definitely the most cutting-edge, innovative real estate developers in Brazil and perhaps the world today. And the reason why we're doing this broadcast is to tell you one of the easiest ways, hassle-free, automated ways that you can become a real estate investor and buy prime investment property in one of the most dynamic markets in the world, the city of São Paulo, which is bigger than New York. And we think Vitacon is a tremendous investment opportunity given their track record and everything they're going to find out today. So Paulo is the expert. He deals with investors for Vitacon in Brazil, institutional investors and partners from all over the world into their dozens of real estate projects that they're currently building in the city of São Paulo and other cities in Brazil, right, Paulo?
Yes, that's correct. It's my pleasure being with you guys. When we should start, let us know.
Will do. And now, in order for us to be able to help you, the foreign buyer, to get the money into Brazil, buy the property, make sure you understand the process involved and be able to earn the rental income, be able to sell your property and move your money back to your country of origin, we have one of the biggest authorities in the currency exchange market in Brazil. This gentleman is a celebrity because he's on TV pretty much every single day in every single TV channel talking about the currency fluctuations. A dear friend, a very, very professional gentleman named Fernando Bergalo from FB Capital Partners.
Well, thank you, Fred, for the introduction. I hope to contribute to this very important team, so we'll be able here to tell this guy how to send money from abroad to Brazil, and that's quite easy, and how to send money back. So that's our function here. So I'm very happy to be here and hope to help you guys and all the audience that is with us now.
And Fernando and we go way back more than 10 years because Fernando's company is one of the biggest leaders in helping Brazilian investors and buyers who want to purchase abroad in Europe, in North America, here in New York City and other parts. All of this logistics, making sure the money arrives on time with very, very competitive exchange rates. And they provide truly a red carpet service. And so this is a key component of our conversation today, how to make this process happen, and Fernando and his team are the best. And finally, the person who put us all together here, Thiago Granato, a high-end residential real estate broker in the city of São Paulo, a gentleman that we have had many clients that we've sent to him and he's sent to us. And Thiago's main line of business is that ultra high-end residential segment in the city of São Paulo and its suburban areas. We were just talking before we entered the air, and he was mentioning to me that he is selling one of the many listings that he has and his team have, which is a $15 million US penthouse. And this just gives you an idea of the diverse price ranges in São Paulo. They're not very far from New York City, actually. So, Thiago, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I thank Fred for the invitation to participate in this live. And I'm available for more details about the real estate market in São Paulo. I hope you like the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Thiago. And so for those that are listening in and you want to be completely hands-off and just earn income in a safe market, in a foreign currency, which is extremely advantageous right now, given the fact that the dollar is very strong, historically has never been stronger than right now, compared to the Brazilian currency, you can enter at a relatively cheap price point and still enjoy the top professional product, management, and expertise. And for those that actually do enjoy going to Brazil and having a vacation home where you can actually enjoy yourself, then Thiago is your resource. He knows the market like the palm of his hand. And we were just talking about how the COVID has prompted a lot of people to leave the major urban centers. Here in New York City, we're seeing in Chicago and other centers in the United States. The same phenomenon is happening in São Paulo and bigger cities, where people are buying vacation homes within an hour or 2 hours drive from those urban centers. And so they have been extremely busy selling there. For those that were with us last week, we did a live presentation with Ana de Figueiredo, a Brazilian American broker in New Jersey, which she has more than 20 years of experience, and she's right here down my window here, crossing the Hudson River, and she's been selling to a lot of New Yorkers in the last few months because a lot of people are moving around. So we're having an echo from somebody. So I'm gonna mute just to be, here we go. All right, so if you are watching and you'd like to ask any questions to the panel here, please type in your comments. And for those that are very interested in learning more about Vitacon's investment products, the prices and all the details, we are going to be available to schedule individual private Zoom calls with the team. So today is just an overview. If you like what you see, then we can schedule some follow-ups afterwards. And I'm going to put the information here on where you can schedule this Zoom, and then we'll jump right in to the conversation with Paulo and Vitacon. So I think the first thing we need to say is, why São Paulo and why Brazil? There are so many places in the world you can invest in, right? The way I would answer this is not only because I come from there and I know the market and its amazing potential, but the fact that Vitacon is so uniquely positioned as a key leader in the future of real estate in every aspect they're going to find out today. So this marriage of being in a great location in a safe market because of its financial potential and a product that is very investor friendly, and they have an amazing track record. I think the combination of these factors are a great recommendation for us here in New York, recommending it to foreign clients to enter Brazil and take advantage of the strong dollar. So before we switch to Paulo, why don't we take a look at the film presentation of one of their latest projects that is under construction, right, Paulo?
Yes, that's it. This one is in Faria Lima Avenue, one of the greatest ones we've been doing.
Yes, and for those that don't know what Faria Lima means and its money concentration, take a look at this video, and we're going to talk shortly.
There's a new currency in the biggest business and financial center of Brazil: the time. And what about you? How much do you value your time? Vitacon and Hines presents Prime Faria Lima. A new space that will help your time to create more value. Designed by renowned, internationally recognized architecture studios. The exclusivity of having everything at your disposal. With Faria Lima Avenue right next to you. Because the highest value is not in time itself. It is in what you do with your time. VN Millennium Faria Lima. Here, time is yours.
Amazing, right? So I wanted to ask Paulo, Give us a little bit of an understanding about Faria Lima, Paulo, and why that region is so important, please.
Okay. First, let me thank you everyone for the audience again. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, my colleagues here. It's always a pleasure to talk about our business and our country and especially our town. Where are you from, Fred? Actually, before I talk a little bit about São Paulo and all the topics over there, I would like to say something about Brazil first. To repoint some things that you just said. We've been in a very good path throughout this past 24 months. Brazil had rough times in this past decades because we had a left-guided party that was governing throughout almost those 20 years, and we had some problems. And after 2016, when our former president was impeached, things started to get back on its feet. So we could put a reform agenda, some liberal economical agenda as well. So the president that took place was Michel Temer, and since he started ruling, things were much better. And then back in 2018, we elected Jair Bolsonaro, which is the current president of Brazil. And he has a very strong liberal economical team, and also a very strong team of ministers. And he is from a right-guided party. And since he took place in the presidency, things are much better. We had a very strong year of 2019 with some big reforms that we were waiting for a long time, especially the Social Security reform that happened last year. And we entered this year of 2020 hoping to be the best year of our lives, especially talking about the real estate market and also the financial market. Things were happening really fast. We were hoping that we had some more two important reforms this year, the tax reform and the governmental reform. And we were hit by the pandemics. So pretty much as everyone else, we stood by for almost 120 days, for almost 4 months. But things got back on their track on May. And we had a pretty decent May in several sectors of Brazilian economy. And we had a very strong June. So now, especially talking about the financial market and the real estate market, we are on the same plateau that we were just before the crisis. So that's pretty amazing. I think everyone is optimistic because of that. So if you don't see a second wave of the pandemics or anything worse like that, I think that we are going to have a strong second semester, and 2021 is probably going to be a very good year.
And I think it's important to point out, Paulo, that unlike the real estate market in the United States, particularly in New York City, if we were to compare New York City and São Paulo for a second, where the peak of the market here happened at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, and in New York City has been gradually decreasing in price, an average about 10 to 15% overall since 2016, according to a recent CNBC poll. Now, it seems that São Paulo, on the other hand, and Brazil as a whole, have for the last maybe 2 or 3 years been on an upswing in the real estate market, right, in terms of activity.
Correct.
So,
That's
and
correct.
the reason for that is the interest rates, right? We were talking about earlier, right?
Yes, one of the main topics, one of the main reasons. So we had during that big crisis that I told you about. So between the years especially from 2014 until the end of 2016, we had problems political wise. So the interest rates were pretty high. I'm talking about 14% of basic interest rates, which is pretty high. So after the new president took place and things starting to get better, they started to lower the interest rates, and there's been lowering throughout this past years, And now we have just the opposite scenario. We have the lowest interest rates ever. We have a 2.25% interest rate right now, a basic interest rate. And actually, it's looking that it's gonna get even lower. So the economists, all the financial specialists are guessing that we will have, by the end of this year, a tax interest rate between 1.5 and 2%. So that changed the market, because in Brazil, we have a very strong opinion towards the fixed income operations. So when we have very high interest rates, the average investor in Brazil tend to let his money in the financial market and enjoy those high yields without taking any risk.
Right,
So
and that's
when we see
traditionally that has been for decades the primary source of large wealthy families just putting in fixed income. And now for the first time in history, recent history, they're having to find other sources of investment. And guess what? Real estate is the next best thing, correct?
Yeah, so real estate is also a historical investment here in Brazil. Brazilians do like a lot to invest in real assets, and they think about it as a good way for you to protect your money, for you to hedge against crisis and everything else. But it's like they throughout the years, it's always like a battle. So the financial market and the real estate market, whenever the interest rates are high or getting higher, the financial market tends to steal money from the real estate market. And when the opposite scenario happens, that is what we are experiencing right now, is the other way around. So now in Brazil, we have larger lines of credits, especially private credits right now. And the debts are getting lower as well due to the interest rates, and especially what makes the real estate market stronger is the fact that investors will need to move themselves. They will need to take more risk. They will need to diversify. And when we are talking of diversification, one of the best assets is the real estate and real assets.
Right.
So that's
Speaking of diversification, I think it's also important to point out for those that are watching and may not be familiar with some macro statistics about Brazil, a country of continental proportions with a population of more than 200 million people, and the majority of the economic activity is centered in São Paulo. A big percentage of that, and the city of São Paulo has in a way similar to New York City, in the sense that you have a main hub downtown area and then big suburbs around, and people tend to do a lot of commuting, except that in São Paulo the traffic is much more intense. And so Vitacon, for the last, I don't know, more than 2 decades, right, Paulo?
A decade right now.
A decade, yeah. You guys are growing so fast; it's amazing. It's been just a decade, but they've hit on a very critical market, which is to be able to live in the major areas, the most desired areas in São Paulo City, where you can do everything by walking, be close to the office, and enjoy all the thriving culture that São Paulo has to offer. To be able to do that, Vitacon has carved that niche, and you've done more than 80 plus developments so far, right?
Yes, 82 so far. And getting what we were saying, São Paulo City is the largest city of Brazil, and actually one of the largest cities around the world. We are talking about the 8th biggest city and the 8th richest city around the world. And comparing to Brazil, São Paulo City is responsible for almost 20% of the country's GDP. So it really consolidates. So when we are talking about all kinds of aspects, when you're talking about tourism, you name it, you can say social tourism, leisure, professional, educational, São Paulo concentrates over than 75% of all the events and all the concerts around Brazil. São Paulo is the city that concentrates, it's the 10th city that concentrates the biggest number of millionaires around the world. So it's a city that's growing pretty fast. We have a study that that states that by 2025, São Paulo will be the sixth richest city around the world. So those are the numbers, and it's a very consolidated area, just as you pointed about New York City. So you have like 10 to 12 neighborhoods that comprehend an area between the two major avenues back in São Paulo that would be comparable to the Fifth Avenue and such in New York, which is Paulista Avenue and Faria Lima Avenue, the one we just saw in the video. So those 12 neighborhoods comprehend 70% of the GDP, of the income, and of the financial movimentation of the city. So you can talk about several aspects. You have all the big firms, all the big multinational corporations, all the big universities, hospitals, banks. So they are all on those two very popular central areas. So what happens is you have only 20% of the population of the city living in those areas.
Right.
Actually, they have like half of the percentage of population that the other areas of the city have. So what happens is, just as you said, you make all those 80% that don't live in those areas to come and go each day. And unlike New York, we don't have a very well-structured subway station or other public transportations, especially not that efficient.
And it's amazing, Paulo, because I am from São Paulo, but I've been in the United States since I was 13. But every time I travel to São Paulo, which is multiple times a year, you see the amazing amount of investment that region you're describing has had, to the extent that culturally it has become a phenomenon where people call that area a county or condado, which does not follow the same. It follows its own bubble culture, comparable. Its own dynamics, its own lifestyle. They are trendsetters, they're influencers, they're leading the charge in setting the tone for the rest of the country in many ways. And it's very much compared to like the richest area in Singapore, the richest area in Hong Kong, the richest area in London, the richest area in Tokyo is this Faria Lima Condado County area. And that's where Vitacon has a lot of their products, because Google has its headquarters there. All the major international companies have Facebook. They're all there within walking distance or within a scooter distance, which people have the scooters all over the place there. So it's a very hands-off and very mobile lifestyle, which brings us to the presentation we wanted to show for the people. So that, Paulo, if you could take us a little bit into Vitacon, the company, and we can start with its CEO, and maybe you can take us from there.
Okay. So what we saw in São Paulo, before I talk a little bit about Alexander, which is our CEO, just to make the link. So what we saw in São Paulo was this huge opportunity to provide mobility and design and innovation, and to turn the real estate market, which is the most conservative one, into something more modern and to reinvent the city. So if you see the slogan of the company is to reinvent the city. So that was the idea. So the company was founded in 2009 with this very strong pillar to provide housing in the major neighborhoods, so that people could spend less time in traffic. So for people to commute, as you were saying, the average São Paulo citizen loses 2.5 to 3 hours a day to go and come back from work. And I'm only talking about coming and going from work. I'm not talking about bringing their kids to school, about other daily chores that they normally do.
Right.
So what we saw is that we could offer a new way to live that would help people to increase their quality of life. So that's the whole concept of the company, and doing developments that are more trendy, more modern, with a lot of technology and a lot of innovations attached, especially from what we've learned from those particular markets that you said. We're talking about Tokyo, London, Singapore, all the major big cities. New York is one of the cities that we always look when we try to do things in Brazil. So those major areas, they are also the high income neighborhoods. So historically, we only had like big apartments and very expensive ones because São Paulo is a pretty old city. We are talking about a city that is almost 500 years old. So those central parts were the first ones to be populated and to be developed. So nowadays you don't have like much spaces for you to develop anymore. So land is very hard for you to assemble, and because of that, it's very expensive. So what we saw was for us to provide housing in those neighborhoods, we had to assemble big lands so that we could build bigger buildings with a higher number of units and with smaller sizes. So that's the whole idea. Because when you have a smaller size unit, it's cheaper, and then it's affordable, and then people can live near their work, near their kids' school, and then they don't need to waste 2 to 3 hours a day in traffic, and they can use that time to do simple things that the population don't do anymore, like having lunch at home, walking their kids to school, reading a book, going to the gym, those kinds of things.
That's important to point out, right, Paulo, that the majority of the footprint of the buildings, the apartment sizes, they tend to be smaller, and the amenities and the shared spaces that tend to be larger with much more programming and entertainment for the community of the building, right? That's a key factor to highlight, right?
Yes, that's one of the key points. So what we figured out is people could live in smaller units where they could have intelligent furniture and things that they could manage their lives without having unnecessary costs and other things with the apartment. But in the common areas, they would have a lot of amenities, facilities, services. So that's the main concept. So that we were the first company in Brazil to push the shared economy movement, and also the higher quality of life, so that you could socialize with other people and all those kinds of things. So in our buildings, it's pretty common for you to see like tons of amenities and a lot of technology within. So I'm talking about biometrical entrance, facial recognition, meeting rooms, co-workings, great gyms. We always have like the 25 meters strict pools so that people can exercise themselves, shared laundry, shared kitchen, you name it. Our CEO usually says that whatever can be shared will be shared. So that's him. Before he founded Vitacon, Alexandre was from the technological market, so he brought a lot from that. He had companies that develop software, games, and startups as well. So all of this is his mind. He's a guy that believes a lot in all of what we are doing about all these innovations and technologies that we could put in our buildings. You can pass this one.
Right. And we should skip to this one, or do you want to talk about this one?
No, I think that this one is just I would just punctuate the design, which is a major pillar as well. So back then, when we started developing the major neighborhoods in São Paulo, had a very conservative architecture. So we push them to do things now with more colors, with glass, with architectural structures. We brought all the biggest architects and studios worldwide, and especially the ones in Brazil. And we've been doing that throughout these 82 projects that we've done.
Terrific.
And that's pretty much what we like to do.
And I think something important for us to point out for the people that are watching and going, okay, I don't want to live there. Well, that's not necessarily the point of this live. The point of this live is to show that these units can be sold to investors, which Vitacon does a lot. And there's three modalities of getting in as an investor. You can buy a particular unit and just enjoy the rental income of that particular unit. And later we're going to talk about how Vitacon has a branch called HOUSI, which does from A to Z property management in the most professional, cutting edge, innovative, technologically savvy way, so that the foreign investors does never have to even set foot in the country and just collect the rental income on a regular basis. But the investor that actually is more institutional, more knowledgeable of the Brazil market, can actually get in as an equity partner. And so this is where Paulo is going to lead us after this. But for now, I just wanted to put on this slide, as we had discussed, Paulo. I believe that of this slide, we've discussed already a lot about the interest rate, but I think we should maybe just highlight once again the currency disparity, right? How it's 5 to 1 pretty much at this point. And Fernando, maybe you can jump in here so we can make this a little more interactive. You've never seen the dollar being so strong in your entire career as right now, right?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, if we put the inflation inside the rate, actually will be not that the highest rate ever, but in nominal ways, yeah, that's a higher rate. So that's what usually all Brazilian customers we had, they always look for buy property overseas in US, but now the moment is for the opposite. As you can see, now we are selling properties here in Brazil and São Paulo for foreigners. So that's where we are now, because of when we have the US dollar rate for higher than R$5. So it's a good moment. So for you to come to bring money in euros or in US dollars to Brazil in order to make any investments here, especially in real estate. So that's why we are here.
And I think especially the real estate investor that is a savvy investor has been in this space for many decades. Maybe the investor's parents were big investors and the grandparents, and so they come from a long line of investments. It's all about diversification as well. And so there couldn't be a better time to diversify to other markets where the person perhaps never thought of than right now, because Brazil, in my view, was always perceived as this extremely high risk, volatile place, and it has been the case for many years. But as Paulo was saying in the beginning, only in the last few years, with the interest rates going down, with the political reforms being very pro capitalism, pro business, and with the technology and these players that are extremely transparent and professional, like Vitacon and others, they're uniting all of these factors that make it extremely attractive for a US dollar-based investor or euro-based investor to buy something for a fraction of what they could buy maybe a few years ago when the Brazilian currency was much stronger against these worldwide currencies. And so you have the timing factor right now, but then you also have these professional players that, thanks to technology also, you can be anywhere in the world, and from your phone apps, you can be monitoring the houses or the apartments that you own in Vitacon buildings, for example. And they can give you all of the transparency, which Paulo is going to talk about. It's all about the technology, I think, right, fellas?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. So, Fernando, we're going to get back to you shortly to talk about the details of the easy step-by-step of bringing the money into Brazil and then bring the money back out. But for now, let's jump back with Paulo. Paulo, talk to us a little bit about the different levels of investors into Vitacon, please, and what the private club means, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. What happened is throughout the time, our major concentration of clients when we started developing was from owners that lived in our apartments. So they saw on our operation the possibility for the first time to live in those major neighborhoods that we were talking about. But as the years came by, this changed really fast because of the change in the Plano Diretor in São Paulo and the arrival of big players such as Airbnb and Uber and all major portals as Expedia and Booking.com and others. So we continue to build smaller and smaller sized units. So back in 2014, we saw that we had a very wide opening to take the market share if we decided to be on the long term with our clients. So we saw that our clients were looking to our units mostly to invest and not anymore to live or to use them like in weekends or whenever they are in São Paulo. And our clients curve changed a lot. So nowadays we have the opposite thing. So almost 90% of our customers buy our units to invest, to rent them when they are done, or to resell them after the market has gone up.
Right.
So we decided to go in the same way. Decided to provide more services.
There's an investor calling you there, Paulo, I believe.
It's not here, I think.
Okay, I think it's Fernando. Someone wants to move some money around. I'll put you on mute, Fernando. Okay.
So that was what we saw back in 2014, and we decided to change our way of view. So back then we were still, in spite of the modern model and all those things that we are speaking until now, we still did a very conservative way of development that is traditional in Brazil. That is the development for sale. So you buy the land, you approve the project, you construct it, and when it's done, you move to the next one. So that's pretty much the way Brazilian developers work. And we decided to once more to look after more developed markets such as New York and other major cities, where the biggest constructors and the biggest players, they normally develop for rental. So they buy the land, they approve the project, they get it done, and after it's done, they put it all for rent and they don't sell it.
They hold the real estate, yeah.
They hold their real estate, and then when they have several properties then that are matured, that have been operating for like 10, 15 years, then you do major deals, like block deals with 5, 10, 15 properties at once.
Right.
That's the nicest way and the more structured way, more professional way, if you could say, to operate in the real estate market. You have more access to structures, to financial structures, and also you can do it easier. So that slide is nice. Mm-hmm. So we have always dealt with investors since the foundation of the company, but in 2017 we founded a department only to talk with investors, especially high income ones, and to talk about more structured contracts and more structured operations. And what you can see here is how we do it. So we have some institutional partners that are mostly foreigners. Actually, two of the biggest ones are from
Bridges
the US.
And Heinz Capital
Bridges
Group,
and
right?
Heinz.
Yep.
Yes, Heinz and Capital Group actually is the sovereign fund from Singapore. That is also a major player in Brazil that operates with Vitacon. So here I'm talking about major operations. We are dealing with 300 million reais plus. So they always getting with us with a joint venture or some kind of deal that is similar to that.
Towards
and they
the very
operate
beginning,
several, right? Yes, and they operate with us with several buildings and several projects at once. Then when we are not accessing this kind of money, and when it's not a project that we have those partners, we jump right after to the C1. So that's the first call of money. So here is for investors that are willing to participate with us of the purchase of those lands. So usually you have that spectrum from 10 to 100 million reais. So that's pretty much the prices of the lands. So it depends on the size of the land and it's how expensive the area is. So they buy the land with us, and they become equity partners with Vitacon, and we deal with all the approval. And once the project is approved, we can go with the launch and everything that is pretty common to all real estate markets. You want to say something?
So in the C1 model, you're basically a partner in a joint venture where Vitacon acts as the general partner and the investor from the outside acts as a limited partner, perhaps. Is that the structure?
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly it. Yes.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't have to be a joint venture. There are simpler contracts, but it's the structure is correct. And then we have if we are willing to distribute more share of this project, we open the C2, the second call of money. And if we are going to this level, we normally accept lower checks. So we are talking about a spectrum from 1 to 10 million reais in average. So
which would be between the 250,000 to 2.5 million. Does my math is right? Somebody help me.
A little bit
dollars?
less than that, from 200 to 2 million.
Thank you.
Dollars.
Yeah.
200,000 to $2 million. And the whole duration of the operation itself. So from when we are starting to assemble the land until we buy it and until we approve the project, we are talking from 12 to 18 months. And then once the building and the project is approved, we have from 26 to 30 months of construction. So normally it takes from 30 to 36 months for you to close the whole operation. And once the building is approved and we are going to launch it, the investor has two options. He can work as a traditional buyer. He can hold his shares, and he will
He
change
can
those shares.
convert those shares into actual apartments, right?
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
he can change or convert those shares into actual units of the building, and then from now on the building is going to be constructed, and when it's delivered, he can also hire HOUSI, which is our management and rental business, to do the whole operation for him. So we could deal from the furniture to the rental itself. We deal with the whole spectrum of the operation. I will talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. And that's pretty much it. So what happens is when the investor wants to get out of this position, once the project is approved and we are launching it to the retail market, then the investors can
exit.
Yes, they can exit. They can end their position and sell them to the market itself.
Right.
And then they receive the money throughout the construction, and they get all the money back when the building is done.
So for the investor that is willing to take more risk, this is a model that provides great returns. And as you can see, the way Paulo has in this slide, it's very much a set timeline with proof of performance from previous returns on investments from their previous projects. And that's where I think Fernando is such an important person to be here. And I thank you for your patience, Fernando, because we're going to get to you soon to talk about the whole movement of the funds into Brazil and out of Brazil, because that's a major concern for an investor, for sure. And so we can see pretty much you have the three levels. The major institutional investor, which is on the same league as Seven Bridges and Hines, and then it talks to Paulo directly, and they do an operation that's custom tailored. We have the sort of mid-range, which is the C1, C2 we see here in the price points and these expected returns and time frame. And then you have the more retail, the individual buyer of units in Vitacon. which I think were the most important element, in my opinion. If I am an investor based in New York, I've never been in Brazil, but I do know that it's a great market to invest in right now. I would want to know how is my property going to be managed, and I think that's where HOUSI comes in, and I think that's a huge game changer too for the against the competition. So much so that you and I were talking, Paulo, the other day, and you told me that HOUSI today doesn't only manage its own Vitacon built product, but the majority of the inventory that HOUSI manages is actually from your competitors, right?
Yes, that was a movement that we did by the end of 2018. So what started in 2014 as a department of the business, we had two different departments. One that was focused on the furniture and the projects and the design of the units. So we called it the VN Decor. So it was to get the units done and ready to be rented. And we had a second department in our business, in our company, that was the VN Stay, that held and took care about the rental itself, and also took care about several buildings that we had. So it manages not only the rental part, but it also manages some building of ours, like the staff and the cleaning and everything else. And then those two particular departments, they grew a lot. So by the end of 2018, we merged them and we did a spin-off. So now those two departments became a separate company that is from the same group of Vitacon, and it's called HOUSI, and it's a proptech. It's a startup focused on management and rental, and it's been a very successful path. Last year we had a major investment from Redpoint Ventures, which is one of the biggest venture capital and investors of startups. And now HOUSI doesn't deal anymore only with Vitacon, so it's open to market. And actually it's a very unique thing, because Vitacon is only based in São Paulo, so all our 82 projects are in the city of São Paulo, and HOUSI has been expanding throughout Brazil, and it also has they're willing to go abroad. So now HOUSI is on 15 of the 27 capitals in Brazil, and it manages over 10,000 units by now.
10,000 units. That's a huge number, because it speaks to the solutions it provides. And this is something that I just wanted to interrupt you for a quick second to mention. As a real estate agent in New York City that gets client requests from all over the world, the vast majority of clients ask me and my colleagues, Fred, we want a serviced apartment that is fully furnished, that we get to use a few times a year, and when we're not using it, it can be rented short term. And I have to answer them every time that this type of product in New York City simply doesn't exist. The ones that do exist, I have to say, don't provide the expected returns. Sometimes you end up losing money, or sometimes you end up breaking even. The reason for that is because the operating costs are so high in a city where you have a lot of labor unions, and the just operating cost to maintain it is very high. Whereas in Brazil, the concept of serviced apartments, or flats as we say in São Paulo, is a very widespread type of real estate product. And Vitacon basically has taken this flat serviced apartment sector and has brought it to the 21st century, not only in the quality of the design, which you talked about, the location, the build, and the professional players involved from all over the world that are investing heavily on it, but also, I believe most importantly, in the solutions it provides when you bring in the HOUSI piece of the puzzle. So that it's not just a regular property manager that's going to send you an invoice. No, they provide solutions that are mind-boggling. I've actually experienced that, because I've stayed in one of your buildings in São Paulo, and I could see that HOUSI was not just the check-in experience. It wasn't just the ordering of food on my app. It wasn't just the arriving into my room and everything is already customized for me. But it's going beyond that and making the buildings a community, because as you said, you build it, but then they come and manage the whole building. So by managing the building, they're not just watering the grass outside. They're actively curating unique experiences through programming, right? Which has gone viral in many cases, like São Paulo Fashion Week, a humongous annual event in São Paulo that attracts models from all over the world. Now, have recently, they've done an edition inside one of Vitacon's buildings through HOUSI, right?
Lollapalooza as well.
Lollapalooza, you see. So it's fun.
Yes, when in last year's Lollapalooza, the Adidas company in Brazil, they got a building of ours, and they did all their operation from them. They customized the whole building. They transformed the garage in a nightclub. They transform all the social parties into bars, and actually the after parties and some concerts after the actual concert after Lollapalooza were in the building, and they launched one of their sneakers there. So it's kind of things that
as you can tell, guys, Brazilians are very good at putting together parties. We host the best parties in the world, as you can see, and HOUSI could not be any different, right? I want to show a video which I think captures the spirit of what you're talking about, Paulo, which is a HOUSI video. And here you see not just your property manager that's going to make sure your apartment is doing very well in the rental and everything is taken care of, but much more importantly than that is creating something fun, unique, and that's bonding the whole community in the building. Let's take a look. So that's pretty awesome, right? Just goes to show some of the many things that HOUSI does for the Vitacon products once they are built. Now comes the big question. I've got my money here in the US, in Europe. How do I bring this money to Brazil? How do I purchase it? What are some of the costs involved in the real estate transaction? And how do I exit and bring my money back to my account in the country of origin? And for that, the expert here on the panel is Fernando. So Fernando, lead us in this process, please. How do we get started?
Sure, Fred. Well, I guess the main idea that we have to share with you guys and all the audience is that, like, we live now in a global world, so the financial market's not different. So it's very easy nowadays to receive money from US or for any country, and also to wire those funds back to any other country. So our central bank regulation nowadays is quite simple. So it's very easy. So wiring money and sending money or receiving money will not be a problem at all. So it's very easy for a foreigner to send money to Brazil. You can use actually any banks, but our office has a specialized service. But independent of that, it's easy for a foreigner to send money to Brazil. So we need to create an IBAN account number to this foreigner, and we will receive funds in US dollars, euros, Canadian dollars, or New Zealand dollars, or Swiss francs. We do that a lot. That's our daily job here for more than 15 years. So it's quite easy to receive those funds and release to the property seller here. Even if you're a foreigner, if you do not have a bank account in Brazil, because that's quite common, and foreign investor, probably he won't have an account here, a checking account or regular account here. So we can do that without an account, so we can receive funds and pay directly to Vitacon or to any other seller. And also, the Brazilian central bank regulation nowadays, it allows any foreigner to hold an account here in Brazil, a checking account. So it's not obligated, it's not necessary to open an account, but if we can do that easily to open foreign accounts here in Brazil, 20 foreign guy, you don't have to have a proof of residence in Brazil, it will be a foreigner account.
So let's play a scenario out, Fernando. I'm here in New York. I'm a US person, and I look at this presentation and I want to buy a few apartments in the new project, Millennium in Faria Lima. Thiago is going to be my guy with Paulo on the ground to pick the best units and pick the right floor and everything. I can send my funds directly to you, FB Capital. Would you act as like an escrow agent to then send that money to to Vitacon?
Yeah, actually, we will not work as an escrow as you have that in US. You will send your funds directly to Vitacon, but using a broker. You must use a broker, a bank here in Brazil. So the money will change hands only from your pocket to the seller's pocket. So it's 100% safe transaction. You do not pass through any escrow agent as you do in US, but you send it directly for the seller. The thing is, if you do not have a bank contact here in Brazil, foreign exchange can be like a tough process. As we can see, we have here in Brazil, 5 or 6 big retail banks, so it's almost a monopoly. So they don't look to foreign exchange transactions the way they need. So because it's not a rental product, so if you leave your transaction with a big bank, probably it will look like a nightmare to do that, but it's not. It's quite simple. You just need to have somebody specialized that only do foreign exchange with expertise on that to do that. So you, Fred, will send a wire like $1 million. I know it's not much money for you, but let's use that number, okay? You send like $1 million here to Brazil. We will receive that wire transfer that from your like Citibank account in New York, and we'll receive that and make the exchange to Brazilian currency to reais and pay directly the seller. So it's from one day to the other. It's something that we can finish like in 24 hours. So it's quite easy. And also any real estate transaction, probably you have to pay here some notary fees.
Closing costs, right?
Closing costs, exactly. So you send only one wire transfer in US dollars to Brazil, and we will here split it and pay. What's Vitacon, what's the notary, what's closing costs. We do it only with 1 hour and one wire. And some interesting thing also that we usually do here, because you are buying something that the price is in Brazilian currency, okay? But you are going to use US dollars, for instance. So you can't know what will be the exchange rate at the day you need to pay Vitacon. So it changes like 1%, 2%, 3% every day. So what we do here, we keep like the price in Brazilian currency. We make an estimated amount in US dollars. We suggest the buyer to send like 5% more just to be able to manage if
as a cushion
rate goes against him. Yeah. So you send the money and you say, oh, if we do not use the whole money, whole funds, we use only the related amount for the property payment here in reais, and we will send back the remaining amount to your own account. So that's a simple solution, because a lot of times you say, oh, I need to receive 1 million reais. How much you need to send? Oh, I don't know, because we're going to send the wire today and we're going to make the exchange in 3 days. So it's quite easy to do that. And like, you do not have to have an account here, because I don't know if you, Fred, maybe you have an account, but it's not necessary. But we can also open non-resident accounts, so you can use to pay another bills from the property or to receive income for rent and everything that. And I must emphasize that it's for a foreigner, it's very, very difficult to open a bank account here, because if you go to any major bank, they will ask you, oh, give me your income tax return, your proof of residence, and the foreigner will say, oh, I don't know, I can't, I do not live in Brazil. And most cases, the bank branch manager, officer, can't speak English or can speak any other language. So we use it to deal with that kind of transactions. That I had in this office last week, a Swiss guy, he was buying some property here, and he set the Swiss francs here, and he couldn't reach the bank manager. He couldn't speak on the phone. He couldn't speak English, and the funds were in hold here in the bank for like 20 days, and the closing date was expired. So you create a big problem that it wasn't supposed to exist. So it's easy if you have a specialized guy to deal with that.
Just like HOUSI does all of these solutions and property managers and goes above and beyond, your company goes above and beyond in providing the solutions to cut through the bureaucracy, like you just described, of a foreign person being so hard to open a bank account themselves. Your company streamlined that whole process for them remotely.
Yeah, but very important. We do that in compliance with all central bank rules. This is a formal transaction. So, because when you say, without bureaucracy, it looks like it's an informal transaction. But no,
right.
the transaction is quite easy. The Brazilian central bank rules is quite easy. I just need to check the source of the funds for the foreigner. Is he sending money to Brazil? So a reference letter from his bank in Switzerland or in US saying he's a good customer will be enough. That's everything we need, and we will be able to receive those funds and pay to the seller here in Brazil.
Perfect. And so once comes time, 2-3 years later, and just as a side comment, we know that it's about 3 to 4% in closing costs. So in order to pay state fees, transfer taxes, and all these things that we pay here in the US, the equivalent is about 3 to 4% in closing costs. So you have to add that to the price. But once we are there, we are buying the product is earning its rental income. Paulo, HOUSI charges approximately what percentage of your gross income in order to do all of these services?
Actually, it really depends. Really depends on how the investor is going to get in with us. Talking about the more common way, that is the client hiring HOUSI to do all the facilities and all the transactions for him. So on those cases, normally it charges 15% of the gross income.
Right.
Yes, 15%. Yes. But as you said, they take care of everything. So we do all the advertisement, we do all the reservations, we do check-in, check-out, all the daily operations from the guest and daily issues. And after he leaves, we deal with the cleaning, and we deal with the checking to see if everything is broke or anything else. So that's pretty much what we do.
And it's important to point out that there are no restrictions to the length of stay like we have in New York City that makes it very hard. Whereas in São Paulo, in your Vitacon housing, you can stay one night just like a hotel, or you can stay 1 year, or anything in between. So that gives the investor who owns the unit great flexibility in the turnover of the residents, especially because the average annual occupancy there for your product, Paulo, is hovering around what percentage? Around
89% throughout the year.
89% average annual occupancy, which is extremely high, guys, which gives you an idea of the pent-up demand for this type of unique product in the areas where Vitacon built. So as an investor, you're getting 80% up average annual occupancy. You have the flexibility that these buildings can rent them nightly. You have a whole team in place to do all the check-in, check-out, all of that for around 15% of your gross income, which compared to other places like here, some places can charge as much as 30, 35, which I was saying makes your math, the math sometimes doesn't add up and it doesn't make financial sense, right? So back to Fernando for a quick second. Fernando, all right, I've had the apartment for 5 years. I love it. Now I want to sell. And this is a big question that people ask. What kind of capital gains tax or what kind of taxes do I have to pay to the Brazilian tax authority as a foreign person when I sell before I can get my money back to the country of origin?
Yeah, that's quite important because it's related to costs, and if you're planning an investment, so it's very important. So the first thing is when you come with the money to Brazil, there's only a fee that we call IOF, that is 0.38%. So it's $380 for $100,000. So it's the only fee or rate you have in this first moment when you bring money to Brazil. So you're going to buy the property, and after 3 or 4 years, for instance, if you sell it, We have here that gain capital tax that is similar, I guess, in US. It's like, yeah, it's for 15% to 22 for a non-resident here. So it's 15% until 5 million reais of profit, and it's a progressive scale. So
after that,
yeah, you can reach up to 22%. That's the higher rate, fee rate of this gain capital profit. So it's between 15 to 22%. So, but only if you have a gain of capital, of course.
Right.
Probably you will have, but only in case of gain of capital, and you are going to pay again the IOF of 0.38% when you send money back. So that's the only cost. 0.38% in the entrance and 0.38% when you send money back. So, and regarding sending money back, it's very, very important. The most important thing is you need, the investor need to bring the money in compliance with central rules, using with the central bank rules. You need to use a formal bank. You need to make that transaction properly, because for 3 or 4 years later, if you need to send the money abroad, and if you didn't bring that money properly, you have a problem. So
right.
The most important thing to send money back is the way the time you came the money in, you came properly. So that's the most important thing, to send the money back. So that's what we usually do. You talk to the customers, so we suggest them to use a specialized way. Do not use any other company that's not a formal banker, because the money will work, the money will arrive here. That's okay, but you have a problem to send the money back overseas at the time you sell it.
Right. It's just like a real estate broker that represents a buyer in a transaction, for example. A lot of consumers nowadays, with the access to technology and sites like Zillow, StreetEasy, Zap in Brazil, they think, okay, I can do this myself. I don't need a broker to represent my interests. But then you don't have somebody there making sure that they're watching out for your best interest. You leave the whole process in somebody else's hands. And it sounds like that's what people try to do when they don't work with a broker like your company that has their best interests and make sure to follow up every step of the way, right?
Yeah, and more than that, those apps that we have nowadays for sending money overseas, they won't allow you to send huge amounts. So they will probably allow you to send $1,000 for a friend. But when we're talking about investment or real estate, you must use a bank, not an app. That's very important.
Right.
You are a bank.
So to sum up what you told us, Fernando, 0.38% IOF when you come into the country. Then when you sell it, you're talking about 15 to 22% capital gains tax on your profit. Then another 0.38% tax to get the money out.
Yeah, that's correct. That's all we're going to pay.
Perfect. Very easy. Now, one last question. If we know the answer, and if we don't know the answer, no problem. We can schedule a Zoom call with those people that are watching and that are interested. We can go into details about floor plans, prices, each different project in Vitacon's portfolio. This is just a little appetizer for those that are watching. We will want to talk to you individually afterwards. But is there an information, Fernando, about the rental income, the annual income tax that you pay on the rental income? Is there a percentage?
Yeah, for a non-resident, for a non-Brazilian resident, and when I say non-resident, it's not a physical residence, but a fiscal residence. That's quite important.
Fiscal, yeah.
Fiscal residence, because you can have multiple, like cidadania, you can be a
citizenship,
citizenship, sorry, but a fiscal residence, you can have only one at one country. So if you are not a fiscal resident here in Brazil, so if you're a U.S. person, U.S. resident, fiscal residence, and you have profits here from rent, from a property rent, you're going to pay 15% of those profits. That's a specific cost for non-resident. The Brazilian tax for non-resident profit over rental is 15%.
Every year. 15% every year. Got it. All right. So this actually, guys, was very good information. Thank you, Fernando, because it just gave you the blueprint. Very easy. How much it costs to put the money in there, how much the closing costs are, how much rental income tax you're expected to pay on an annual basis, around 15%, how much you have to pay in capital gains tax, and how much it's going to cost for you to get the money back out. So I think for the first episode of what I hope it becomes more of a frequent series for us to talk about other investment products in Brazil, this was extremely informative. I learned so much here. So I wanted to thank you guys so much for your time, Thiago, Paulo, Fernando, and for all of us that are watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, we'd love to hear your feedback on how this format of how this content can be better presented to provide more value to you. How can it be more useful to you, to your investors, to your clients? We're here to provide solutions. Like HOUSI provides property management solutions. Fernando provides currency exchange and brokerage solution. Thiago, lifestyle solutions in amazing properties in Brazil. Us here in New York, solution providers. So any final considerations, anybody, before we end?
I just want to thank you guys for this time and for this opportunity to explain a little about foreign exchange. As I told you, it's not a black hole. Send money overseas is like easy. So all customers may be safe about that, and that's the main idea of our presentation. And again, thank you for the opportunity, Fred, Paulo, and Thiago.
Thank you, Fernando.
Actually, I would just like to elaborate one last point about HOUSI that I think it's nice for us to summarize. Is about the operation itself. We have several buildings that, especially investors that are willing to take a higher check or to spend a little more money with us, that they could get in with us in the same calls of investment that we talked about, and those buildings will not go to market. So we will only keep them for rental. So we approve the project, we deal with the construction as fast as we can, and we already delivered the building all furnished by HOUSI. And once it's done, we keep the whole building managed by ourselves and all the units as well. So in those kinds of buildings, you can have even more transparency and even a greater dividend yield and such. So that was all I wanted to say. And thank you very much again, Fred, for the invitation. Thank you, Thiago and Fernando, for the companionship. And thank you all for the audience. Hope to see you guys in the next one.
Absolutely. Thiago, thank you so much for organizing this, putting us together in Brazil. And it's great because the day that we met, Paulo, with Thiago's introduction, you guys were on the news all over Brazil because it was the day that Heinz, I believe, announced the injection of billions of dollars into Vitacon. And so you were very busy that day, but you still were able to find time to give us a whole rundown on Vitacon, which I said, man, this guy's good. So
I love the conversation and thanking everyone for their presence. See you in the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you, Thiago. Guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to disconnect from the air. Reach me here, Fred Gouveia at New York Casas in New York City if you want to follow up and have individual Zoom calls to talk about more details of these types of investments in São Paulo, Brazil with Vitacon. Till next time, thank you very much. Take care.
Take care.